were to die a traitor's death. Lastly, of course, no one could have predicted that the lithe and golden-haired Prince Charming, who ascended the throne of England just before his 18th birthday in 1509, the handsomest prince in Europe, would die nearly 40 years later, a monster of obesity, with a reputation more like that of Bluebeard than Prince Charming. Let us not forget that the story of the 6 wives of Henry VIII, with all its elements of sexual drama, pathos, horror, and at times comedy, filled Europe itself with amazement. The King of France, no stranger himself to extramarital pastimes, was incredulous when told that his brother of England had just repudiated his 4th wife of 6 months' standing, in favour of a nubile little creature of whom no one had ever heard, young enough to be the granddaughter of his first wife. "The Queen that now is?" enquired Francois I, and on being told that it was, he let out a deep sigh. An indiscreet lady-in-waiting spoke for many when she exclaimed in 1540, "What a man is the king! How many wives will he have?" My second aim has been to illumine certain aspects of women's history through the lives of these celebrated exemplars, celebrated in the first place through marriage. But then that is the point. Marriage was the triumphal arch through which women, almost without exception, had to pass in order to reach the public eye. And after marriage followed, in theory, the total self-abnegation of the woman. Here is the contemporary view of marriage plainly expressed by one of those most sympathetic to the situation of women at the time, the Spanish philosopher Juan Luis Vives. A wife's love for her husband includes respect, obedience, and submission. Not only the traditions of our ancestors, but all human and divine laws agree with the powerful voice of nature, which demands from women observance and submissiveness. Yet Vives, unusually, was a public advocate of education for women, whom Catherine of Aragon consulted on behalf of her daughter Mary Tudor. In general, Vives's belief that woman was a frail thing and of weak discretion, and may be lightly deceived, which thing our first mother Eve showeth, whom the devil caught with a light argument, represented the prevailing view. Even Sir Thomas More, sometimes regarded as a prominent patron of women's learning because he encouraged the education of his daughter Margaret, once expressed the hope that her coming child would resemble her in all but the inferiority of her sex. Behind the liberals Vives and More marched ranks of people, both men and women, who took for granted woman's inferiority and her subordination to her husband. If this were held to be true of ordinary wives bowing before ordinary husbands, how much more awe-inspiring must the power of a royal husband have been? We are dealing here with 6 women who were married in turn to the supreme power in the land, the royal head of state, and, from 1534, the self-constituted head of the church as well. No wonder Catherine Howard, young and incredulous, was convinced that the omnipotent king, to whom she was married, must be able to overhear the very sins mentioned in the confessional. Catherine Parr, one of the very few women in this period whose works, prayers and meditations were printed, was explicit on the subject in her Lamentation of a Sinner. Children of light, if they be women married, they learn of St. Paul to be obedient to their husbands. It is now that the wonderful paradox emerges that makes the study of women's history so fascinating and even exhilarating to those who practice it, not merely a pathetic chronicle of suffering. Rich, feisty characters flourished in this atmosphere of theoretical subjugation. One might note that even the naive Catherine Howard was not suggesting that certain sins should not be committed, only that they should not be mentioned in the confessional. The other 5 wives, as we shall see as the story unfolds, exhibited remarkable degrees of spirit and defiance of which women living in much easier circumstances, legally speaking, might still be proud. Although this is the story of 6 very different women, to that extent the varied stereotypes are correct,